to the idea that there is a higher power or source energy, or, we all have our own name for it. Something guiding you, watching out for you, giving back to you what you put out into the world was a lot of learning and letting go and trusting.
Have you ever seen someone living an amazing life and thought to yourself, how'd they get so lucky? If you are not currently living a life that's on your terms, a life by your design, then this podcast series is for you. This is the More Confidence with Luna Guy podcast, and in this special season, I'm going to be interviewing people who are living a life by design, living a life on their terms. And I'm going to find out once and for all if it is just luck or there's something more going on. Let's dive in.
Danette, I feel like you did the thing that so many people wanted. You did the thing. So many people have this grand dream of quitting their corporate job, the 9 to 5, the grind, doing the thing and buying themselves a van and traveling around. Tell me, how did you get so lucky to have this experience?
Well, I would say it is very much not luck and very much making a series of hard choices that were not comfortable and not the plan and not anything that I thought I would be doing. So a bunch of choices.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is there are lots of ones that you didn't want to make. What were some of the ones that you didn't want to make?
Yeah, ones I put off for a really long time. So corporate America, I worked in my job out of college for corporate. I was in car parts for 13 years and realized I didn't like it in about 2000. Knew there was something else I wanted to do with my life. And it took me all the way until 20 to actually do it, to actually quit. I actually quit in October. I quit originally and panicked and said, nope, I can't do this. I've always known corporate. I've always known security. And I went right back. I had another job in corporate in 2 weeks. That only lasted 3 months because this was just gnawing at me as something I needed to do. I needed to get out of corporate and do my own thing.
Wow. How scary was that for you? You realize in 2015, this is not for you. I mean, so many people experience this in a relationship too, right? How many of us are in a relationship with our workplace or with our partners? We know that this is not where we need to be. We get almost a higher calling. Is that what it was like for you? Did you get like something higher or some kind of pull from the inside? What was that?
Yeah, it was just like once you know, you can't unknow. And I think for years I put off like reading that book that would make me think, oh yeah, I can do something different, because it's just too scary. So you don't even want to open your mind to the things that are an option for you or an option outside of what you're really, really comfortable and really, really safe with. So I think it was just a series of, finally picking up that book and finally listening to that podcast. And just once you start to toy with the idea of there being something better out there for you, it gets really hard to go back. It gets harder and harder to go back.
It does get harder and harder to go back. I feel like fair warning for everybody. When you start living a life on your terms, it's like addictive. It's very difficult to put yourself back in the box once you've been let out.
Yeah, there's a naivety.
Yeah, isn't there? Like you don't know what you don't know.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Was there any specific podcast or book that you were avoiding? You've mentioned that a couple of times, or was it just books in podcasting?
The ones that I was really interested in, the growth podcasts, the Be Your Own Boss podcast, the Take Charge of Your Own Health, and, a series of different people. But those things that I knew deep down I really wanted to do, but you don't want to learn how to do it or hear about how tough it's going to be, because you're going to scare yourself out of it. So it just takes courage to even listen to those things that are going to open your mind.
Thank you for speaking to that. I really think it's unspoken that just the thought of it is scary. That, people might say to me, well, why wouldn't I join the course that I know is going to change my life? Well, because then you'd have to change your life.
Exactly.
It's much easier to stay where you are. What finally made you, if you knew that built up over the next, 6 years, close to 7 years, You're like, I'm done. It's sorted. You freak out in those 2 weeks and you go and get yourself another job, albeit only for 3 months. Finally made you.
I think it was just a gut feeling. It was January 2nd of 2020. And, sometimes I'm not a big New Year's resolution person, but it was just that feeling of, okay, we're in a brand new year. It is January 2nd of 2020. Am I really going to do this for another year? And is that year going to turn into 20 more? And it was just something about having kind of a new beginning with that new year that made me call my boss and say, no, I'm out. I don't know what I'm doing. He said, where are you going? What are you doing? What's your plan? I said, I don't know. I just know I can't do this. So it was knowing more than anything what I couldn't do and where I couldn't stay versus where I was going.
Again, a really amazing point there. I think that a lot of people go, I need to have a plan. Especially when you've been in a company for a while, everyone wants to know, so what are you doing? Have you got a new job? Often in that farewell party situation, people ask you what you're doing and where you're going. I've had many clients, want to, like, how do I have those conversations? I am curious, there would have been many January 2nds in those 5, 6, 7 years, many January 2nds where you were like, I can't do this anymore. Is that right? Like, there would have been times before that where you thought you couldn't do it anymore, but you kept doing it. What was different about this?
That is an excellent question. Besides that gut feeling, I think all the years going by, there was still a comfort level with it. There was still security. I think I was always able to tell myself something sweet about the job, where it was, I've got a nice company car. I've got an expense account. Oh, I still get, I get to go on great vacations 3 weeks of the year. I'm happy. That's enough. And it was just feeding myself the story of that's enough and I'm content until it just wasn't.
It almost sounds like you got really honest with yourself.
Yeah, very, very honest. And yeah, it's that finally being able to be brave enough to have that conversation with yourself and admit those things to yourself, that all these things you thought were making you happy or you thought were enough very much aren't aligned, and looking in at who you are and who you want to be.
These are the words that I would use for myself, Danette. There was like a lying to ourselves. Like, we're kidding ourselves, right? We're thinking, as you say, I've got a great vacation, for 3 whole weeks. I have to work 47, 49 weeks to get the holiday, but but I've got 3 weeks of leave every company car expense. But you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, you're lying to yourself, or you're operating from a place of fear and what you think is comfortable and what you think is happy. And safe.
What was the first thing you? So that January 2nd, and you call the boss and I don't know what I don't know what the plan is, but I know that I can't come. I know that I won't be in the office. What then? Talk us through what then, internally for you. Did you freak out? Were you excited? What was the very next thing that happened?
20 was a year of undoing everything. So there wasn't a big celebration. I had already I quit. It's wonderful. And then I went back for 3 months because I was so scared. So this was like take 2 of trying to do it. So I feel like I had already stunted the celebration because it took me twice to even finally quit. So from there, I enrolled in my health coach certification course that would take me through the next year. And that's something that I had been toying with the idea of for a very long time. So I knew kind of what I wanted to do next. And then I took my dogs to the park and started spending a lot of time just enjoying my dogs and being home and having space to myself to read and explore and start to figure out what I wanted to do.
How was that possible for you? I think that a lot of people that might be on the verge of that are sitting there going, I can't afford to just, time, was there a financial plan that got put in place, like for the practicalities of being able to, I think a lot of people would want to spend some time at the park with their dogs reflecting, but maybe can't afford to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's very important part and something I like to be really forthcoming about. So I was married at the time. So I had the conversation with my partner that he would support me during the next year as I figured out my health coaching business and how to get that off the ground. So I had the stability of a partner as well as corporate America and savings and things that I had been feeding into to do something like this. And I only started that plan about 2 years earlier. So it's not like I had a huge nest egg to pull from, but I thought I had the security of a partner.
Yeah, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. I think to speak to, like 2 years, we could sit there and go, okay, well, you're lucky because you have a partner who was able to do that, right? Who you had enough money to be able to, for him to support you during that period. At the same time, like spent 2 years kind of squirreling away some things, putting some money aside. I can imagine that I don't know, you temptation to bring it to your.
No, it wasn't. It was more me. I didn't want to be dependent on somebody. I didn't want to be not working. I had worked since I was 14 years old and had never, ever been without my own paycheck. So yeah, coming to the mindset where you're depending on somebody else was something I had to do for myself before we even had that conversation.
Yeah, get into that mindset, right? Of going, cool, if I want to make this transition and I do happen to have a husband who could help me here, you're going to have to lean in and do a whole bunch of trust here. What was that?
Again, I didn't do it very well. So for 3 months, I think that was the main thing. I was like, oh my God, I'm completely dependent on somebody else. I can't do that. And I went back for 3 months and then, just came to that, it's all right. Basically came to the idea that I wasn't a real spiritual person or somebody that believed in the universe supporting you, but through a lot of reading and other things, decided to kind of take a chance on myself and a chance that things will work out the way they're supposed to, and that it's okay to take, whatever help or whatever support you need to do something better for yourself.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that level, the courage to do right. Particularly when maybe you didn't at that time. It sounds like that's changed for you, but you didn't at that time have the universe has got my back. I'm in full trust. Everything is all. I mean, I huge faith in the universe, and yet I still freak out in those moments for sure. So I think that I can only imagine what it would be like without that.
Without that,
yeah, without that. You mentioned something just now about not having faith, I suppose, and you being willing to take a chance on yourself. That isn't something that happened, I'm presuming, overnight. Is that right? Like, was that something that you've cultivated, something that you've created?
Something that I've worked on over a long time. I'd say at least 10 years, coming away from this idea that we're on our own and you have to just work hard and that there's nothing in this world supporting you, was kind of how I work. Just white knuckle it and depend completely on myself, and to open up to the idea that there is a higher power or source energy, or we all have our own name for it, something guiding you, watching out for you, giving back to you what you put out into the world. Was a lot of learning and letting go and trusting.
What made you make that shift? I mean, you obviously moved into the personal development world. You moved into like changing your mindset and listening to those types of podcasts. What made you kind of like flip into, source energy or universal consciousness kind of?
I don't know that it was one thing. I think there was a little bit of luck and just what I became interested in. I was driving all over the country to sales calls, and I just started getting deeper and deeper in podcasts and ones that lean towards rewiring your brain and opening your mind to new thoughts and ideas, and things like meditation and breath work and more spiritual practices just kept popping into my audiobooks and podcasts. And I'm so grateful they did. And I went that way because I feel like I'm a lot more supported and a lot more at ease than I was in my earlier years.
And we probably need that on this path of living a life on our terms.
Absolutely. Yes. Because there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questioning. And yeah, you have to trust that there's something that is making things work out.
Talk to me about that. The trust that you need, the uncertainty that you experience. What's it like even now, like a couple of years on, right? Or you obviously spent the first year doing your health coaching. Then what happened?
So then in April of that year, so shortly after I made that decision, my marriage ended and I got divorced later that year, and sold the house in Seattle and decided to move into a van. So from being in a house or in an apartment my whole life, I decided to completely remote and be a nomad and live in a vehicle, which is something I didn't know anything about. It was very, very scary and very new to me, and has taken a lot of trust in myself and in the universe to keep going.
Because that's a lot of uncertainty, isn't it? I mean, when we think about 2 years ago, you've got a stable job that's giving you, a fair good amount of benefits that you're experiencing. Your home's stable. You get to come home, have a shower. It's in the same place you've got electricity, you've got internet, everything there's a lot of stability. that you had 2 years ago. How are you coping with the instability that is your life at the
It is embracing the chaos every day and embracing the certainty and trying to just get into these phases where I really try to bliss out with the uncertainty and with the phase of life I'm in, because I know how many people would love to do something like this. And I know I'll look back someday and realize this was such an awesome, amazing time in my life. I don't have a hot shower or something on my van broke and it's just utterly chaotic.
Okay.
But yeah, what
bliss out in the uncertainty.
Yep.
Something just shifted with inside of me as you said that. It might even sound like a little sadistic, and I love it. I actually really love it. It just reminds me of being a Les Mills body pump class. I don't know. I'm sure that it's American, right? So I'm sure that you have that experience. I was in one just the other day, and they're like, okay, the burn's here. They're saying the burn here. They're like, now embrace the burn. Sitting there going, the burn is awful. The burn is gross. Why would I want to bring more of that in? I'm still doing it, by the way. But to embrace and then you've just said here to bliss out, like on the the uncertainty. Tell me more about what that is.
I think there's some bliss out in uncertainty. I also say sufferfest, which is commonly used with like type 2 fun people, where you're, climbing a mountain and you're just absolutely, your body, every part of you hurts and the weather is awful and the snow is pelting you in the face, but you feel so good when you've reached the top, and it's so fun to look back on. And I just know that's the same with where I am in my life. I will be so proud that I did this, and it will be such a memory to look back on.
Oh, I'm reflecting right now on how so many of don't want to suffer in the moment, like don't want to experience the uncertainty, don't want to experience the utter discomfort. And I'm not just talking about the discomfort of maybe not having a hot shower to have every day, or, that your kitchen's sitting underneath your bum and having a coordinator van, like I've never lived in a van for a long period of time, but I've done it on short trips. And so can understand that it's almost like a game of Tetris on the discomfort, the daily discomfort of the mental game of living a life that corporate America would have told me is dumb or silly. How do you go in the face of other people's judgments around your life?
In comparison, and comparing my life to people that still have that life that I used to think I wanted. And I think the comparison thing is something that got me for the last year, or the first year on the road, really a lot of comparing my life to what it used to be and wondering what the hell I've done. But comparison or judgment is the thief of joy. And if you can quiet that, you can enjoy where you are and what you're doing and being with yourself that much more.
Yeah. What's your why?
My why? I think I'm figuring that out. I spent so much of my earlier years, or basically up until my mid-30s, kind of not knowing who I was, living to be safe and to make everyone else, my parents, feel safe and know that I was secure, and checking the box, getting the job and having the marriage and buying the house. So I'm still figuring out who I am, and I think I'm still figuring out my why, but joy and peace have a big part of my life, doing things that bring myself peace and joy as well as others around me.
Beautiful answer. I love that. And again, I thank you for the candor with that, because that too many people have this idea that, oh wow, she's a digital nomad. Look at her go, living the dream. She's at the corporate job. She must have it all figured. And part of my brand, yeah, exactly. The head is shaking for those who listen. That I teach authenticity, and I think that the world needs all of us having conversations. No, it's a scary path that I take every day. And yes, there's huge moments of joy. That's why I do it. The peace and joy. It's why we. And there's sacrifices that need to be made, and we're not always. It's not that we have it all figured out.
Right.
We're just willing to walk into the uncertainty, and let go of the image of having it all figured out with the check boxes of the husband and the house and the job. What do you think has been the hardest part of yourself that you've needed to let go of in order to live this life?
I think the ideas I had around success and happiness, that if you check the boxes and you get the degree and you do all the things, that then you will be happy. And success and, crossing off the checklist items creates happiness. So I think that has been definitely my biggest hurdle is letting that go, along with the life I built, and reminding myself that unfortunately it didn't make me happy, and that the unknown is such an opportunity to find true happiness.
So this vision, this idea of the checkbox, it's sold to us, isn't it, Danette? Don't you think? Like, it's definitely sold to us that if you get the right job, if you get the right body, if you get the right part, then you will be happy if you tick all the boxes. And I think, look, I would say millions, if not billions of people, certainly in the Western world, in well-paying jobs that look really good on paper, in marriages that look really good on paper, in houses that look really good on paper, with an empty home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's an unhappiness pandemic where everyone's sitting there going, but I'm meant to be happy now.
Yeah.
What is success and happiness to you now? At least this for the early 24 version. I appreciate it always changes, but what is it today for you if you would sum?
Like I said, I'm still on such a journey, but success and happiness is learning to need less, and to, not have a defined checklist of any kind for any part of your life. So to do things that feel really good and be able to make decisions that are almost thoughtless, that they feel so right.
Yeah. Where do you find that line? Because I feel like people go, YOLO, you only live once.
Mm-hmm.
And very often, if there's in my experience, when I just want to do what makes me feel kind of vibe, that often leads to like hedonism. And I say hedonism in the sense of like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to, I'll stay in my shitty job. I'm going to piss all my money up, or I'm just buy the watches or do the thing. You spoke before about the fact that, like suffer and bliss out on the uncertain. Where do those two things connect for you? The fact that you're doing things that make you feel good and you're following that feel, but you're also willing to put yourself in quite uncomfortable situations. How do they?
I don't know if they really marry. I think it's really getting honest with yourself about what feeling good is. And if, spending tons of money or smoking the cigarettes or drinking yourself into a stupor, if that's actually you just doing whatever you want and feeling really good, or if that's actually covering something up. So I'm not sure there's an intersection between them, but more of an honesty about what true happiness is.
Wow. So when you're talking about doing what feels good, I'm hearing that it's not what necessarily brings pleasure, like pleasure in the sense of like, if I eat the jar of peanut butter, it's delicious, but that might not, like in the moment it gives me pleasure. But long term, or even like, in 20 minutes with a belly full of sticky peanut butter and 2 days worth of calories in one spoon, I may be aligned. Is that what you're talking about? That maybe pleasure is not the same as feeling?
Yeah, it's I think it's the opposite of feeling good. It's being brave enough to do something that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel, it's usually not easy. What's going to make you happy ultimately and make you feel really good in the long run is usually not the easy thing to do. So along with a lot of these things in my journey, I've added on extra challenges to myself, freedom on the other side of like really hard things. So I've given up caffeine and alcohol and eating at restaurants, and I've just a myriad of things that are really easy and feel really good in the moment. But there's so much freedom on the other side of those things being out of your life and not something you have to constantly fight your willpower for.
Oh, the gold in this, Danette, the gold in the way that you see the world, I think is so valuable to everybody because of the fact we do live in a hedonistic culture that it's like, oh, no, I want the thing. So get the thing. Sure, go ahead. Really understand that it's on the other side of very often the discomfort that the true happiness.
Yeah.
Because you said before about like needing less. You've learned to need less and rely on, the dopamine. But then you're getting other ones in the sense of like you took up rock climbing at 36. You're trying to learn how to whitewater kayak roll. What is whitewater kayak roll for those at home who don't?
Yeah, so I went into kayaking pretty blind as well, and I'm not a big water baby. I was born landlocked, so I'm not real comfortable on the water. But in a kayak, when you're going down the river, if you hit something the wrong way, you're gonna turn upside down, and then your head is underwater in a rolling river. So you have to be able to roll yourself up and back. So, a very essential skill to be able to take that sport any further.
Yeah, and so you're learning how to do.
Yes, yep.
How do you learn how to do?
In a pool with a teacher or in a pool by yourself, and you just spend a lot of time undoing it's called a skirt, and rolling out of it, and your boat fills with water and you start all over again. So it's a heck of a process.
Wow. Yeah. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. How many times do you think that you have to do that before you trust yourself to do it on?
Well, I haven't done it once yet, so I'm up to about 500 attempts. So we'll see how long it takes. But yeah, that's a good question. Once I do it, to trust that I'll also be able to do it in a very different situation. I think you just got to go for it. I think you have to practice it and wait for that first time when it's going to happen in the river. And you're either going to, you have a safe way out, or you're going to complete the role, and it's going to be awesome.
How do you stay determined and focused on that? Like 500 attempts, no result yet in a pool. How do you not get disheartened?
Good question. Not that I haven't gotten very frustrated or taken long breaks from it, but with anything with rock climbing, I think it's staying curious. And this year I've been very focused on the beginner's mindset. I think a lot of us are really uncomfortable with being a beginner at anything, not having all the answers, not knowing, how it feels, what it looks like, and not succeeding. So going into the gym or going into the pool and flipping around in a boat or falling off the boulders, it's not comfortable. It's not something we want to do. It's not safe. So I think I've trained my mind to just kind of be in that uncomfortable place and know that it's not going to feel great right away, but it's, again, going to be awesome when it finally happens.
Yeah. That's a perspective shift. The beginner's mindset of, really being okay to suck.
Mm-hmm.
That you're never going to be able, like when you first anything, you're not going to be able to. And it might be 500 attempts, and each attempt that you make, you get better at it. Or there's some nuance, or you learn something different around.
Yep.
Each and every single time you're learning something more as it goes along. And I'm hearing that in all of your stories, Danette, that you're really, you talk about the journey, and it's an unfolding evolution. You've already accomplished so much in the last couple of years in the sense of challenging yourself, pushing yourself, stepping outside of the comforts. At the same time, you really recognize that it is an unfair
Yeah, absolutely.
For you, what would you say that your favorite mistake is in life?
That's a perspective shift, because we try to forgive ourselves for our mistakes, but I don't know that we try to reframe them into ones that are your favorite. Probably just waiting so long to do things that I really wanted to do. Waiting so long to quit my job was ultimately a mistake, and staying in marriages that weren't meant to be was a mistake. But I'm so grateful for all of it, because it's led me to where I am now, and I don't think or know that I would be here without my mistakes.
Yeah, because what do you think that you've learned from that 15 years, or let's say, that 5 to 7 years when you knew that you wanted to leave corporate America, and that in that 5 years, what do you now draw upon from that time where you stayed that helps you in your life?
I think you drop on personally, let's see, that's a tough question. I think in all those years I was learning just like piece by piece in little tiny ways to get uncomfortable, and it took a long time to get comfortable with the discomfort. And like I said, I'm still in such a new environment, and an environment that throws me curveballs every day, that I definitely drop on some of that strength, embrace the mental toughness that it takes, and the discomfort, and just remember that, it's the impermanence of it all.
Love it. You just said about mental toughness there, and it's right. And we currently live in a world that has an increased awareness around mental health, significantly, in my opinion, in lots of beautiful ways. We're talking about mental health. We're having the conversations about our feelings. A lot of that is far more socially acceptable to talk about. From my point of view, I also see an increase in fragility along with the increase in sensitivity. And for me, I think that the increase in sensitivity is a really beautiful, a really necessary. The increase in fragility concerns. Where do you think, and I'm curious to know your opinions around this, that mental toughness, because you have to do things that you don't want to do. You have to be uncomfortable. You personally, you've recognized for yourself, you need to be honest with yourself and truthful. It's not always about feeling. It's about doing the hard thing. In my perspective, we live in a world that is not prepared to do hard things at the moment. What do you see in the world? What's it like in America? What's your view?
Yeah, I love this topic, and I think it's so important. I think there was a major pendulum swing where we weren't acknowledging mental health, and there was, it wasn't a good space. No one was even comfortable to go to therapy, but somehow we swung all the way to the other side, to the spot where trigger is a big word, and you're scared to trigger anyone, and no one has any responsibility within themselves to have to deal with why they're triggered, or take care of any of their mental health. So it kind of falls to the outside, and I feel like people are giving away their power when they're if they're triggered or with something by outside events. You get to a very fragile and disempowered place. So with mental toughness, it's the same with my health coaching clients. I'm not trying to get them to restrict or take away things that make them happy, or not eat sugar because it's their joy. I'm just trying to get them to a place where they're empowered to take back their health and to take back their mindset. Unfortunately, fortunately, it comes from doing hard things. It comes from being a little bit uncomfortable, and we can't hug puppies and see rainbows every day. It's just not the world we live in, and to grow and get better and to have that freedom on the other side of tough choices, you've got to do the hard things.
Yeah, you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable, don't you? I mean, that's what we've been talking about so much, and what my biggest takeaway from our conversation here today, Danette, is that we have to be willing to be uncomfortable. If we want happiness, if we want liberation, if we want the result, in so many areas of our life, discomfort and the avoidance of it is what keeps us disempowered. And I don't think people understand that. No, well, I want the cushy life, and we got to have a wake-up call. If you want stronger muscles, if you want big muscles, any muscles at all, you're going to have to tear the fibers of that muscle while lifting heavy things. And that's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel great when I've 60 kilos on my back doing a squat. It doesn't feel, but it feels great afterwards, and then the strength in my body and what I then can rely on changes everything. So yeah, I love what you're saying there of like, it's mental toughness. Let's get to the gym without it being mental abuse.
Right.
Where do you see the difference there? Because I know that self-love is important to you as well. Where do you see the difference between the self-flagellation of get up, you piece of shit, go to the gym, you're so lazy from a mental, from a self-talk perspective, and an accountability perspective? This is what we need to do. It's uncomfortable. We're going in.
Yeah, it's finding a very careful balance between something that's really hard. We're all going to have a bad day or make a bad decision. And I think beating yourself up, shaming yourself, living in that shame spiral really has no place for anyone, because it doesn't help you get your power back. I use the word empower a lot because I just think it's such a good filter to filter things through, whether you're acting from a place of power or disempowerment. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a gray area, but I lost my train of thought a little bit on that one.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is. I think that it can be gray, and I know that you spoke. When you talked to me about joining the podcast, you spoke about like learning to trust yourself, and like with any kind of trust, it gets built by giving some trust, seeing what happens, going again. So right, okay, cool. I was a little bit harsh on myself there. Oh, I wasn't accountable enough in that example. I let myself off the hook too. We're becoming the parent to ourselves, and we're learning.
For sure. It's a balance and not beating yourself up, because that doesn't do any good, but setting that whole hard goal and making a promise to yourself, and not breaking the promise to yourself. Just like you wouldn't tell your child you're going to do something and not do it for them. So doing that same thing and treating decisions that you make for yourself and promises you make to yourself the same way.
As important.
Yep.
Yeah. As important. You're a health optimization coach. I love it. Of course, a full-time nomad. That's what, you've dealt with a myriad of health issues yourself. Doctors, you never got answers that you were yearning for. You're still on your own health journey, and I think that we all are for periods of time, but you've been doing years of research, you have nutrition certification, and you have a passion for healing, and you're empowering others. There's that word. You're empowering others to take their own step of effect. Where can people find more about you and what you do in your service?
Yeah, so mostly on Instagram. I'm sure we'll put the handle in the show
Well,
notes. Yeah. So mostly on Instagram. And then from there, you can get to my website and book a free coaching call or see a little bit more about what I do.
yeah, nice. So if what kind of people would come?
So I got asked the other day by a friend if she was at brunch with her friends, what would she be looking for them to say that would allow her to pass me on? And I thought it was a really cool way to
Nice.
frame that.
Yeah.
So I said, if your friends were sounding frustrated or confused about their health, and I think the most common thing we hear is, I've just been to my doctor and I've gotten X test back and the doctor said, here's your results. You want to look into this more, or maybe do something with your diet, or, go do some research on your hormones. And it's doctors, unfortunately, don't have time to spend with you, helping you implement the actual fix to these chronic diseases. And that's what I have the time and space to dig into, get to the root cause, and actually put in plans and lifestyle changes that will get you to a healed place.
Fabulous. And just by talking to you in this conversation as well, I feel there's a bunch of internal work that might come with that as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. There's a lot to do with mindset in the work we do.
Yeah, of course, because you've got to be in a state of empowerment in order to get to a state of health, right? Like if
Right.
you're disempowered and you feel just take another prescription drug to mask the problem, that's the same. That's just self-medicating in the same way that, drugs or alcohol or scrolling, staying in corporate America is.
Right. Yeah. I think diagnosis is so important. It's important to know what you have, but I think it can also be disempowering to here's your diagnosis and you'll have it for the rest of your life and nothing else. So it's taking that diagnosis and getting to an empowered place and believing that you can heal can change things so much.
Yeah, I love it. A closing question for you, Danette, if you were to describe living a life on your terms in just 5 words, what would those 5 words?
Ooh, empowerment, love, community, health, and freedom.
Empowerment, health, community, love, and freedom. Thank you so very much for being on the More Confidence with Luna Guy podcast and this special series of How'd You Get So Lucky. It's been such an having you on the show and unpack, the courage that it's taken to get uncomfortable in everything that you've. I will definitely be putting the show notes, your Instagram handle, so everyone can go and find out more about Danette Deichmann and the incredible work that you are doing, leading by example to Danette. So thank you so much for being.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the More Confidence with Luna Guy podcast. I hope you feel more confident, more self-assured, and ready to go tackle the world's problems and maybe kick ass in some of your dreams. If you haven't already, I would love for you to like and subscribe, follow, and maybe leave a review so that other people know how to find this awesome podcast too. If you're wanting to sink your teeth into something even more juicy, my #1 best-selling book, Perfectly Imperfect, Your Complete Guide to Loving Yourself and Loving Your Body, is now available on all good bookstore sites, both in print, digital, and I narrated it for Audible as well. If you think that coaching or maybe one of my courses is for you, why not head to www.moreconfidence.com.au and get in touch and see if we can talk. And of course, you can find me all across the social medias. That's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, which is where you're probably listening now, or maybe even here on the podcast platform. Sending you big love and wishing you a beautiful day.